This week on Bazaar Buzz, we show you the new E-Edition from Mercedes-Benz stable. Exclusive interview with Gunter Butschek, MD and CEO Tata Motors. And a unique chase sequence where Jaguar XJ battles it out against a technologically advanced drone.
Hello and welcome to CNB Bazaar Buzz. Let's start the show with a look at the E-Edition from Mercedes-Benz that's just been launched in the Indian markets. This is to mark 20 years of the E-Class brand in India, and the new model does boast of exclusive features. Here's a closer look.
There are important models and then there are the really critical ones. For Mercedes-Benz, the E-Class is both. Its largest seller in several markets and here in India too, the E-Class has now completed a 2-decade run in the country. The E-Class journey marked the start of innings for Mercedes-Benz in India when it began assembling the car here in the mid-1990s, and it has sold over 32,000 of them since. No mean feat in a fairly small luxury car market that was even smaller 20 years ago.
Now these are like legendary, iconic models the world over. A car like the E-Class, it's nice to have a legacy for it in India too. So yes, 20 years of it is pretty special. It does of course go back to the car that first carried the E-Class tag, not just here but everywhere, the W124. And this was still very early days for Mercedes-Benz in India. It used to, of course, be the old Tata plant from where these cars used to be made and rolled out. They sold very few numbers back then. But when you look at that car, you instantly think Mercedes-Benz. That's the car that defined in many ways what the brand was all about and, of course, what the E-Class was all about too. Next up, you got this car which arrived in 1997. It came soon after that one because, of course, the W124 had already been in global production for some time. So it was time for the generation change. And that's when the internal code switched from 124 to W210. So the 210, revolutionary in many ways because it shocked critics and fans all over the world for splitting out the headlamp into two separate units. And I still remember way back then, I wasn't still driving, but there used to be a tagline globally that said, "Look at Mercedes-Benz with new eyes," and it was a nice pun. That twin headlamp look is something that's kind of stayed with the brand in many ways because when you got the W211, it maintained that look. Remember, the C-Class also went into this twin circular headlamp configuration, but let me not digress. And with that, you also started to see the definition of the hood line getting more and more accentuated and pronounced. This car was almost the mainstay of the Mercedes-Benz story in India for the longest time, ever since it arrived in 2002. In 2009 is when we got the current generation car, the W212. And while it came in, it had almost like a hushed arrival. And it's not just in India. Everywhere, this car got a little bit of stick for not being a revolutionary jump like the previous E-Classes had been, which is why Mercedes spent over $1 billion, which is unheard of for a facelift. And in 2013, the facelift arrived and boy, did this car take off. Not just here, every market. Mercedes won lots of awards for it. It did really well. It had the new LED headlamps. It just brought in a whole lot with it. And the Edition E, of course, builds on that as it starts to almost in a way start the process of unwinding the W212 story. Because remember, globally, the switchover is now imminent to the W213.
We will soon start talking about the new car, but for now the moment belongs to this one. And I have to say it's quite a treat to see all cars across generations lined up together like that. Pretty special. And the one at the center is the new launch from Mercedes-Benz, the Edition E, which will see the current W212 bow out by the end of the year. So it gives you plenty on board to feel as special as its anniversary badge promises.
Now it's typical with any model when it's at the end of its life cycle for it to sort of peter out in terms of sales. You wait for all those units to get sold off, then the new one arrives. It's not quite the case with the E-Class, don't get me wrong. The new car is still many months down the line, and this one is still very much under production here. But by doing the Edition E, it's a bit of a trump card as well for Mercedes-Benz, because the model, remember, is very significant for Mercedes here in India and in the rest of the world. It is the volumes driver, and by doing the Edition E, you get a fully loaded car, one that's still very contemporary and good looking, stands fairly well with its rivals too, and that's fairly competitively priced as well. So the idea is to almost sort of give it a big bang send off, rather than, like I said, wait for it to just trickle out or just slowly go into a phase out mode. So the Edition E will do fairly well, I think, because it is like a new car in that sense. It's coming through with a fair number of new features too. Let's take you through them.
So besides the Edition E badging on both sides, you get an Amg Styling Kit and new multi-spoke alloy wheels. Inside the cabin, the changes include a navigation system from Garmin as standard, and the car now has a feature-rich rear seat entertainment unit. Under the hood, the Edition E sees no change. The E200 gets the 2-litre inline petrol engine that churns out a maximum power of 184 bhp and develops peak torque of 300 Nm. The E250 has the 2.2-litre diesel engine. This makes 240 bhp and 500 Nm of torque. And the top spec E350 gets the 3-litre diesel with 265 bhp and 620 Nm. All three variants come mated to a 7-speed automatic gearbox that sends power to the rear wheels.
Now there's a feature that's been carried over from the S-Class that's a nice addition to the E. All you need for it is to have the key with you. It could be in your pocket. I could be carrying a lot of things in both hands, and all I need to do is just run my leg under the bumper. The boot pops open, so you can drop what you are carrying, and while of course there's a button here to close the boot, you can also just simply run your leg underneath the bumper again, maybe this way, yes, and voila, it closes as well. So it's nice, it's a little bit of a gimmick, but it can actually come in pretty handy, and it's certainly an all-new feature for the E-Class.
Finally, the prices. The car starts at 48,60,000 rupees for the E200 petrol. The diesel-powered E250 and E350 CDI have been priced at 50,70,000 and 60,61,000 respectively. All prices are ex-showroom Delhi.
It may not be a rare thing a few years down the line to celebrate 20 years of a premium car model here in India, but it certainly is rare right now. We're talking about the E-Class, and let's talk more about it with Roland Folger, who's joining us.
Nice to meet you, Sid.
Good to see you, and congratulations on not just the Edition E which you've unveiled, but 20 years. I mean, that's a serious legacy in the sense, of course, we've always known Mercedes was the first manufacturer to start assembling cars in India, but actually looking at that lineup, including the very first car there, the 124, that makes it pretty special.
Yeah. It's also special for us because in overall, it was our volume driver. And I think it's what we truly understand as being the heart of and the soul of the Mercedes-Benz brand here in India, because this is what we started out with. This is what people see on the roads, and a total of 32,000 cars that we have in the meantime sold in India of these specific vehicles here. I think that's a story to be told about.
And that's true in other markets too. I mean, it's not unique to India, this thing about the E-Class and its legend.
Yeah. Well, whether in Europe, whether that's taxis that basically gave the E-Class its image about longevity, about high quality, availability, 24 hours every day. This is something that therefore we see as a core brand. The safety of the car, the longevity, the high interior quality, the seating comfort, all these issues thrown together, I think have been shaping the brand strongly.
The 32,000 units that you mentioned that have been sold in India to date, of course, the larger chunk has come in the last few years. I mean, in the sense that things have accelerated in a big way. When you did the facelift in 2013, of course, it was not just here in India, but everywhere. It was hailed as almost a new generation in many ways. That's also been heartening for you, the fact that you've seen this upswing in the last few years?
It was a big contribution. We believe strongly, rather than discounting towards end-of-life cycles, to enhance the vehicle value by introducing features as standards that customers were interested anyway. We try to also basically sustainably increase the value of the vehicles throughout the life cycle to keep them attractive. Because naturally we introduce life cycle measures throughout the life cycle of the whole vehicle. But in the end, it's especially important. And I think also therefore looking forward, it's something that we're extremely happy with and that we are happy to launch in combination with the 20 years.
Well, I can tell you that it's nice not to see a petering out of the model, because this particular one has been very successful for you. With the Edition E, of course, you've added a lot of features. Do you think that there's also an extra appeal around this segment right now? I mean, there seems to be almost like an urgency with this space. A lot of buyers coming back strongly.
What we see basically, and we recently introduced also the new C-Class, that naturally also internally customers are looking at several options that we in the meantime have for them. There is the brand new S-Class that was a major success in the markets. There is the C-Class, which has been taken over some of the queues. So actually that vehicle had to stand on its own. And I'm very happy to state that we did not see a lot of internal, what we call a cannibalization or anything of that nature. What we have seen and actually experienced is that the vehicle basically has its very, very strong following within, especially I would say also the business class, so to speak, of our Indian customers.
The new technologies is an important point, because I know the cars keep getting more and more of that. But when you, as you mentioned rightly, with the new platform and new technology, of course you have to also prepare the plant for it. So would you already sort of begin that process in a short time to just get ready for the next car?
Well, we do that once we usually stop producing the old one, which we at the moment have not planned in the foreseeable months. We now are gauging the market, and of course this is an important part for us to gauge also the interest and the acceptance of that vehicle, and we will continue to produce as long as we possibly can, because it also keeps us stable in the marketplace. And customers are realizing that these old, perceived by some as old and outgoing vehicles, are actually the ones that have the highest quality level after being in production for 7 years. And with all these incremental improvement that we do year by year, what you see here is basically one of the next classics that we will be looking back hopefully in 20 years again and say, this is the lineup of vehicles that we have been doing here for 40 years.
Okay, one last question, and I think I know the answer to this question already, but quite a lineup of cars here. I know which is my favorite, which is your favorite.
My favorite is traditionally always the one that we just launched, because so much has gone into that.
In this case, there's a but.
Yes, and the but is what I just wanted to get to. Actually, for me, the most interesting vehicle is then usually always the one that we had around the longest, because these vehicles you still see on the road. These vehicles still make their mark out there, and none of the customers that we have talked to, and it was very difficult to find one who was even trying to part with it, but these vehicles are highly sought after. They're usually passed on through the families and kept, and these are some of the vehicles that, by the mere fact that they've been surviving into very, very strenuous market and road conditions for so long, in itself are a statement. And to drive around with a vehicle like that, and there is a convertible version of this one available in Germany, which I'm looking at the moment, that is something to behold.
I must tell you that the first Mercedes-Benz that I ever drove was a 124. So which is why for me that is special. And on the GLA Adventure now, we've seen a lot of these taxis in Morocco, and we've come across a lot of old 124s. So. Very grand old car, and very fitting to, I suppose, end there. Thank you for speaking to us.
Thank you very much for coming.
And congrats again.
Thank you so much.
Coming up after the break, we bring you glimpses of the Tata Prima Truck Challenge, and Siddharth answers your queries on your car and bike-related queries. Stay tuned to CNB Bazaar Buzz.